Origination Overload.
Welcome to Origination Overload. Today I'm going to show you 3 levels of Futurepop EBM bass lines from basic, intermediate and advanced, and at the end I'm going to throw in a little bonus for you. So this is the first bassline pattern we'll be taking a look at. It's a remix I did for, excuse me, I'm going to butcher this because this is French. Après le nu. Are you ready for love? Okay, so let's just break down the layers of this quickly so you can see how it's kind of built up. First of all, I got a beat going. And I've got the sub playing. Hopefully you can hear that. You might hear some clicking going on. So why is that? On the sub bass, let me take these compressions off. This is what it sounds like. Now what could have been done better on this bass line is if you play with the attack and the release, you can get rid of these clicks. Let's try do this. This is on my amp envelope. That's kind of an amateur mistake that sometimes people make, is if you listen to your bass lines carefully, you might hear some little clicking going on. But try play with your attack envelope first, and then perhaps your release envelope to remove these kinds of clicks. But anyways, so what else is going on with this bass line? So this is with the beat. And if we just play the beat, take a note at this main peak here. It's playing at about 60 hertz, right? Here. It's got a second little peak here at about 160. Now let's go back to our sub bass. So the main peaks of the bass line, the fundamental, it's about 80 hertz. And there's a second peak here at about 40 hertz, which we don't actually need. And what could have been done better on this was removing more of these low frequencies, which we're not really even hearing. So that's another common mistake, is too much low end. If you play the beat and the sub together, it is taking up a lot of space here. So our song is pretty full already with just these 2 layers. Sub bass has got another layer on top of it, which gives it a lot more presence. And look at these frequencies. Some of the low end has been cut out on this layer on top of the bass. Now let's remove the sub bass. It's still quite bassy. But that sub just gives it a bit more oomph. So let's take a look at this pattern. It's a really simple pattern. It's playing on 4 keys, on the D, A sharp, F, and then the E. And it's on a 1/8 grid. So take note that my tempo is 138 beats per minute, and these notes are alternating on 1/8, and it's an octave. It's going from C2 to C3. It's just going up and down an octave, right? So D2, D3, D2, D3, etc. Cool, so that's pretty straightforward bass pattern. Well, let's just listen to that track without the kick in the bass. How empty it is here in the low end. Other things to note on this track is that the beat is mono. My sub bass is also mono, but this layer with the bass is slightly wide. If I make it mono, let's undo that. Ever so slightly. Another thing to note with this bass line is that my sub is getting sidechained with the beat. This is the kick drum coming down and sucking down the volume of the sub bass every time the kick hits. Cool, let's take a look at the next one, which is a bit more intermediate. So the second track we're going to look at is also a remix I did. It was for, excuse me, I want to butcher this name again, Cameron Evesk Davis, and it was a remix of his track Homebody. Okay, cool. Let's break that bass line down quickly. So, I've got a kick going. And these are the layer of the bass. And so these are the layers of the bass line. I've got a kick going. And then the bass line. Take a note that the kick is mono, and so is this bass layer. But the second bass layer is actually quite wide in the stereo field. And if I make it mono, and again in context, let's listen to this track without the bass line.
Welcome to my home, I have never left this place. The world outside is
And look how empty the low end is here.
dangerous, I've seen its awful face. This is my humble place where I spend my awful time. Hiding from my window as the world it passes. Welcome to my home, I have never left this place. The world outside is dangerous.
Okay, let's take a look at this bass line pattern. So the notes it's using is a D, G, A sharp, and an A. And my grid is on a 1/16th, tempo is at 115 beats per minute. So an easy way to think about creating a bass line like this would be to have your grid on 1/16th, having a note on every 1/16th, right? So you would have 1/16th notes, and you would remove the first note on every kick. What's happening here is there a bit of rhythmic pattern changes. So over here, removing a note, making some notes shorter than others, and also going onto different keys to make it more interesting. And this bass line is using two sawtooth waves on different octaves. And so the layer on the bass line, it's playing exactly the same pattern. And what's going on with these waveforms is, break it down. You'll notice that all of them have got unison on them with different settings. Some of them are actually modulating and there's distortion on it. Another thing to notice, there is some side chaining going on with these bass lines. You'll notice that when this plays, it's actually getting side chained, triggered with the kick drum. So every time the kick is hitting, it's basically sucking down that bass line's level a bit. to make space for the kick. And now we're going to look at a more advanced bass line, and this is another remix I did for White Noise TV. It's the remix of their track called Drive. This version is an edit, so it's not the one you'll find on Bandcamp. Okay, let's listen to that without the kick drum and the bass lines.
We try, we try, we try. Thinking over each of us on our own. Time will come, we can accept the cost. We cry, we cry, we cry.
Okay, so the layers of the bass line. This is kick. We got the sub bass. It's mono, just like the kick. We got a more complicated square wave on top of that bass layer to make it stand out a bit more. And then we got the arps. Notice this one is pan left and it's a bit wide, and the other one is pan right. Okay, let's take a look at this pattern. The keys it's using are F, D, A, back into the F. What's also interesting to note about this bass line is that at the end of the bar, before the next bar plays, it's actually going up an octave. So from F to F3, D2, D3. Okay, let's take a look at these ARP layers. Playing the same keys, F, D, A, F. So this is what the ARP looks like. It's playing 3 octaves, and it's not playing a full 1/16th, it's missing the first note. If I change this to 1 octave, listen to it. Two octaves. 3 octaves. Also to note is that the layer on top of the bass line, the ARP, it's got some unison on it, but also the phasing is doing a lot of the work. Also to note on these ARP layers is that I'm also modulating some of the portamento. Listen to these notes glide between themselves. You see the portamento here. And if you remove the portamento, it's just got more of an interesting slide to it. It's very subtle. So if we export this ARP pattern, this is what it looks like. You'll note that it's also going between 3 octaves. F1, F2, F3. Cool. I hope you found that interesting. Hope you learned something. Hope you got some ideas. I'll check you in the next video. Boop, boop, boop. And as a bonus, we'll take a look at this last track. It's a remix I did for Project Ich. Was featuring Electric City Cowboys, and the track is We Are the First.
No signs of humanity. All there is insanity.
Alright, so what makes this bass line interesting, when we look at these ARPs, so you'll notice that this ARP layer doesn't have hold on. If it did, it would sound like this. But instead, it's off. And what's interesting about this layer is that it's got shuffle on, and listen to what it does to the bass line. If I take the shuffle off, and what that shuffle is doing is, if we export it and we take a look at it, is that it's throwing the notes off ever so slightly. As you see over here, if I export this without the shuffle, the notes are hitting on the beginning, as opposed to what it was with the shuffle, which is moving it slightly. So this track is just like the others, where it's got layers, where the bass line is laid up as well as the kick. Kick's got a click on top of it. This is the bass line. Then it's got ARPs laid on top of it. And then the ARP with the shuffle. And if we listen to the song without the bass line and the kick, a nice and empty low end from about 150 Hz below. So if we look at this without the kick, notice this is the highest peak, which is this bass line. But when the kick comes in, that is now actually my highest peak. So let's refresh ourselves on some basic patterns. I've got a kick going. This is the bass sound we're going to work with, which is a mix of two different size square waves, and they're in different octaves. So let's take a look at this kick. A and the fundamental is hitting here at about 60 Hertz. And we could ask Google what key is 60 Hertz in piano key frequencies. Take a look at this. So 60 Hertz about is a B. As you can see, quite a small increment change between 61 and 65. Could use something like 5 volts per Q3 to take a look at this kick. And it's, yeah, the key is somewhere here between A, C, D. So now we've got kind of an idea of the fundamental frequency of the kick drum and what key it's in. Let's go back to our bass line and just hit on those keys kind of between A, B, and C and just see what sounds good. I think C sounds kind of good. Let's try a different octave. Yeah, I think C. Okay, so we got an idea of a key for this kick drum, C. So my grid is on 1/8, and the kick is hitting on these notes. This is going to be playing exactly on top of the kick. Now, a simple house pattern, you'd be moving this, just watch this number change. So it's on the 3 now. Alright, these generally sound better as long notes. If I change this to 1/16 compared to the long note, with that you got to be very careful that your length of your kick and your notes of your bass line are not overlapping with each other. Otherwise you're going to really lose your groove. Just listen to this. So that's also something to really think about, is the length of your kick and your length of your notes and how they're interacting with each other. If that's kind of like a basic offbeat bass line, this would be a galloping bass line, which is very common in progressive music. This would make this note shorter and we duplicate it. So now it's on the 4, this note's on the 3, this one on the 4, and the kick is on the 1. Here's the kick. And again, with the trick with these is to make them a bit smaller, so you've got more definition between the notes. You'd also sometimes have to play with the decay of your bass line. You'd sometimes also have to play with the release of your bass line. Another thing you could do is add a note on the 2. And to make it kind of more Futurepop-y is play around with your octaves. So let's put this up. Or taking some notes, putting them up a tone, and some notes putting them down by 2 tones. Also having notes playing on 1/16, so like this, and again kind of doing patterns by jumping them up an octave. And at sections maybe even having them go down or up by a key. Anyways, I hope you found that interesting. Hope you got some ideas for yourself, and we'll check you in the next video.